Do you have like theme music that comes in?
I don't have no theme music yet. I should probably get some theme music.
Need some.
I've actually had someone reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, I'll do like a whole like graphic intro theme music for you and stuff like that." So
you could probably go on Fiverr and get it for like $11 from.
I probably could. Wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Howard Show. This is episode 3, and we got Jim Boatman here. He decided to come on the show because I asked him to. And for people that don't know, Jim is one of the top litigators and law firm owners here in Southwest Florida, Marco Island, Naples, and Fort Myers, and Tallahassee, actually, not just Southwest Florida, up in the Panhandle as well. And he is my title partner at the Trinity Title. And Jim has been pretty big on my life in a very short amount of time. I've only known Jim here for about going on 5 months now, but he has done a lot for me in my journey and my new journey from selling the business and helping me on the title side and definitely on the law side as a real estate broker and other things, but bringing his advice and wisdom and stuff like that. But Jim has an absolutely incredible story, and I want to get that out there because his story can probably relate to a lot of people. He's not one of these rich kids from Naples that grew up and went to law school and stuff like that. The other night we were actually having cigars, and it came out this way, but Jim went from GED to JD.
That's right. And
when we said it like that, I was like, man, that's a really incredible story. I mean, not many people go from a GED to JD, and I want to get to that eventually, but enough about me talking. Let's introduce you to the audience, who you are, where you're from, stuff like that.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, John, for having me on. It's it's an honor. I've really enjoyed getting to know you. It has been 5 months, but it's been very sort of a dense 5 months in terms of all the experiences that we have had compressed therein, and so it's fantastic. And I'm humbled that you would ask me to be on your podcast.
Well, you sponsored this, just so you know. Yeah, Boatman Ritchie Law Firm, Trinity, and Boatman Ritchie sponsored it for $100,000. So thank you for that donation.
Okay, well, I look forward to cutting that check. So yeah, anyways, I first and foremost, I've been married for 30 years to a fantastic woman. Her name is Joy. I have 4 kids, and 2 of them are biological and 2 are adopted. We've just been very blessed. And but I find myself in a situation where between a law firm, a title company, a marketing company, have a lot going on, but simply just trying to do the things that I feel led to do, and things that are fun and that are relational. You know, I tend to, different people are driven by different things, and I tend to be driven by relationships. I really just enjoy that. Actually, the motto for my law firm is truth guided and relationship driven, and that's an authentic motto, in that, you know, we don't try to induce people to come to the organization because of a motto. We want to be held accountable to that motto, and we try to, you know, I just try to live my life in that way. So yeah, GED to JD, I was long story, man.
I mean, it's an incredible story though, to go from that, because I mean, a lot of people that usually just don't even go to college after just a GED, you know, they have a lot of life struggles and stuff like that, but I mean, that's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah, I had an interesting childhood. I have, first of all, 2 amazing, wonderful parents who just didn't like each other very much when I was about 3 years old, and they got divorced, and it sort of, and then there was this sort of, you know, evolution of things that occurred that by the time I was a teenager, I didn't really have direction. I didn't have a consistent father figure in my life, and sort of had me sort of grasping at what I thought masculinity was, which, you know, included kind of head banging and stuff that really was kind of dead ender. I really wasn't much of a headbanger. I liked hanging out with them, you know, and sort of posing with them, and, you know, but So long story short, I was asked to leave public school when I was a junior. Right at the end of my junior year, I got into a couple altercations, and I was asked to leave. And then my dad was kind enough to offer to send me to a private school in western Pennsylvania called Kiski Prep, north of Pittsburgh. And so I took him up on that and went there and actually thrived for a while until I got in trouble again, and they asked me to leave. And they had made me do my junior year over again. So, when I got kicked out of Kiski and put on a bus back to Central Florida, which is where I grew up, I had never been a senior in high school. So that's kind of what led me to get my GED. I was figuring, you know what, maybe I just need to go ahead and get my high school equivalency out of the way and progress my scholastic pursuits after that. So
yeah. And then something I just found out the other day was you also, after that, well, I think you went to community college or a local college for a couple of years, and then went to Embry-Riddle.
Yeah, I did.
So we went to the same school. You actually went to the campus one. I did the one when I was in the military, but it was just kind of like, that was a cool kind of connection that we just figured out like last week.
Yeah, it hasn't really come up in our conversation yet on this podcast, but I happen, as you know, to be one of these crazy Christians that really believe that God sort of informs all relationships and uses relationships for his means and his ends, and I find that a lot of times God will he'll allow things to become evident sort of after the fact that sort of just circumstance or coincidence would not have likely brought about, and I just find them to be indications that God was in the relationship that you and I are now having and will have, because he puts a little bit of a marker there. It was just interesting after 5 months to realize that we both had gone to Embry-Riddle.
Just little confirmations, like little Easter eggs.
That's right. That's exactly what it is.
Easter eggs. Like when we were talking about Embry-Riddle, I'm like, that's crazy. I'm like, that's where I went, and because I don't meet a lot of people that go to Embry-Riddle.
Yeah.
Like it's usually either kind of like pilot specific or like the military community, because they're basically on every military base, and they push Embry-Riddle really big, especially on the Air Force side, because a lot of our military experience, we get credits to go to Embry-Riddle, so that's why that's kind of the big push. So that was pretty neat. I'm trying to think if I met anyone else outside of Embry-Riddle, but I can't think I have.
Every once in a while I'll come across someone, but yeah, the decision to go to Embry-Riddle wasn't one that was, so I get my GED, and I at this point, I always knew that I was going to continue my education. I just, sort of had to get some goofiness out of my system, and it didn't last long. I ended up getting a couple of jobs and started to go to Valencia Community College, actually in Orlando, and really they had a really good degree program. It was an honors program, interdisciplinary studies. So once I kind of focused and got enrolled, I actually loved college. I hated high school because I just never really found my rhythm there. And once I kind of got out of kind of the world of the house that I was living in, and I just had to be my own man and my own adult, if you will, I really sort of got into rhythm. And so got my AA and really enjoyed Valencia. And before I graduated, I was out with a buddy in a canoe on a lake, just basically south of Orlando and south of the airport. And I'm out in the middle of the lake. We're just canoeing along, and we're doing a little bit of bass fishing. And all of a sudden, these two F-16s come flying right over the lake. I mean, they're so low, they're having that ground effect on the water, and they go right over our heads. And it was like a religious experience for me. And I had always loved aircraft, but so after that experience, I said, I want to be an aerospace engineer. So I applied to Embry-Riddle and got in, and so that's kind of what led me on that path. So it was not real thought out. I just sort of got caught up in a moment and ended up going to Embry-Riddle.
And then how long after that was it you went to law school?
Okay, so about 2 years into my aerospace engineering studies, it became obvious that maybe it wasn't the best career path at the time, because we're talking about early '90s. I'm in like study hall, struggling to get B minuses in physics and Diffie-Q and calc, and the guys that are helping me in that process are the people that graduated with A's and don't have jobs yet for $15 an hour. So I was thinking, you know what? Since it appears we only need about 35 aerospace engineers in the country right now, they just weren't building many or designing many planes, maybe I should shift gears. And my grandmother had always told me that I should be a lawyer, and she was the wisest person in my life. And so, and there was some lawyers in my heritage. My great-great-grandfather was the governor of Georgia, and he was a lawyer, and then my grandfather was a representative, and so I decided to transition. I went transitioned to UCF, began to study political science there in the pre-law program, and ultimately graduated. I was married at the time, and I only applied to one law school, and that was FSU, because my wife had family there, and I'd heard horror stories about how terrible that law school could be for young marriages. So her dad and her sister lived in Tallahassee. I applied to one law school, and thank God, literally, I got in. I had pretty good grades and did okay on the LSAT, but it's still a little bit of a risk only applying to one law school.
Yeah.
So then
So you went to FSU Law?
I went to FSU.
Oh, I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're very familiar with the Panhandle then. Like,
Oh, yeah.
You know it very, very well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
That explains why you have the law firm in Tallahassee.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, got it. See,
So-
still learning a lot.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting story about the law firm in Tallahassee. When I went to law school, I became really good friends with a man by the name of Frank Allman. Fantastic person. After law school, pre-law school, he was law enforcement. Post-law school, he was prosecutor, and then he has subsequently become a judge. And he's a circuit court judge up there. And he and I every year go on a long motorcycle trip, usually 2,000 to 3,000 miles. And on every trip, we have the headsets, and it's just he and I just talking the whole time. And he would constantly talk about an attorney that he used to go head-to-head with as a prosecutor, and then just had the opportunity to observe in the courtroom. And he was just really taken with this attorney. His name's Dan Hogan. And he always sort of said, you know what, man, I just wish you could meet this Dan Hogan. We wish there was some way you guys could find synergies. But Dan Hogan was a station chief for the public defender's office, and so how that would ever correlate to a business relationship with a commercial litigation firm in Southwest Florida was never very obvious. But God was in the works, and long story short, the public defender, who he was essentially under, lost an election, and then Dan became persona non grata in that department, and began to look to get private. And so, long story short, I had a breakfast meeting with him, with he and his wife, and me and my partner, and we instantly liked each other, made him an offer, and so now, and that's a couple years ago. So he's not only an excellent trial lawyer who's focused on criminal defense historically, but he is becoming an excellent commercial litigator as well, because that's one thing he wanted to do. He was tired of representing people who sometimes were actually guilty of what they were charged, and he was having to get them off, and it became less and less comfortable to him. So now he gets to cherry pick. So he only represents people who are either innocent or who are in the right, because that's the only people we represent.
Yeah. So, I know being a Christian and God's big in your life. When did that come into play? Was that before law school, during law school, earlier in your life?
Yeah, well, I mentioned my grandmother earlier. My maternal grandmother was historically my best friend. And after I was asked to leave high school, I actually moved in and lived with my grandmother when I got my job and did my undergrad, the initial undergrad at Valencia Community College. And Well, skipping even farther back, my grandmother used to take me to church when I was a little kid. My parents were not, Christian per se, at least not in the way that a Christian would define Christian. My dad's kind of basically agnostic, and my mom is more like New Age.
Yeah.
But my grandmother would take me to her little Baptist church, and when I was about 9 years old, I decided to accept Jesus, and I was baptized. But I didn't live in an environment where it was really discipled or taught much, and so you wouldn't necessarily have known that I was a Christian for many years, other than kind of Christmas and Easter. So I was like a Christmas and Easter Christian for many, many years. But then, just to distill it, over the course of many years, God kept showing up and showing me things, and I kept sort of pressing in more and more, and ultimately I'm absolutely convinced in the whole thing. And I've experienced so many amazing things. As a lawyer, I'm someone who loves evidence, and I'm an intellectual, so I don't like to just drink Kool-Aid because somebody tells me to drink Kool-Aid. I've studied the Bible. I've had experiences, and over the course of time, I've become, convinced.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jesus is the key to everything for me. He's sort of the center point. He's the true north, and the indwelling Holy Spirit is who I rely upon to give me discernment. Because if left to my own devices, I'm a hyper selfish person. That's my kind of default setting. Even if I'm nice about it, I'm still selfish. So I find that the Holy Spirit helps me.
No, and I've noticed that. I'm gonna kick these lights on.
Yeah, good idea.
Because I think it's getting a little dark on the camera.
Yeah.
And hopefully I don't stop the recording. Nope, I did not stop the recording. Just make sure I kick this on. Let's see if this kicks on.
Wow.
Oh, there we go. Is that too bright?
No,
it's not too bad.
I think it's good.
We're doing this from the balcony of my place in Bonita Springs, and there's some little no-see-ums getting my ankles. I don't know if they're getting you, but they're biting out my feet a little bit.
Oh, I hate
Should have had my pants and socks on, But no, to go back to the religious thing, I've definitely noticed that in working with you in the last 5 months. A lot of times you'll be on track with something. So like something that recent came up, you had a way you wanted to handle it, and then after you took some time and prayed on it and spoke with other people that are Christians and just kind of let God guide you, then you kind of change your path. And I think that's really smart, because us as humans make mistakes, right? And you always kind of go back to the teachings of God and the Bible to guide you, which I think that's probably a mistake. I mean, I know I'm guilty of that myself, and I think a lot of people are. We don't usually we're like, I know what's best, and we're not looking for that external guidance.
Yeah, I mean, over the course of time, I've come to understand and believe that, like literally there is an entity, there is a hyper-intelligent, macro-intelligent, omniscient entity that seeks to have a personal relationship with me and who wants to tell me stuff. Now to the, to someone who's not a believer, I mean, it sounds nutty, like, okay, you've got voices in your head. Well, it's not always like a voice in my head. It can be a small, still voice. But essentially it's this. If I have an idea about something, I try to hold loosely to that idea, because that idea might just be a function of my intellect and my experience. And there might not be anything supernatural or extra special about that conclusion. It could just be an intellectual conclusion. And if you read enough of the Bible, you see that one of the benefits of having a relationship with God is that you can ask him things and he'll actually give you guidance. Sometimes the guidance is through something that you read in the Bible. You'll be reading along and all of a sudden they'll just, when you experience it as I do, it's almost like you're reading a paragraph, and there'll be just words that kind of are highlighted or seem to be emphasized to you. Sometimes it is a small, still voice. Sometimes it'll be a something that I've been asked to consider by another brother or sister in Christ who maybe sees like a blind spot. Hey, have you considered this? And then it's like, because God will use a plurality of ways to communicate, including people that you are walking with, to tell you things. Mm-hmm. So if you hold loosely to it, and then there's always going to be a litmus test, right? Because if you're coming to a conclusion, then you should say, okay, I wonder if this is Spirit-led. The thing about God is He's very practical and He's very tactical. That's how He is. And I could show you from Scripture how He's very... And when you think about that, and then you know His nature, then all of a sudden what seems like four-dimensional chess really becomes like checkers. And the hardest part is not knowing the play to make. The hardest part is making the play, because many times the play is one that's more selfless than selfish. It doesn't feel right because it's like, wait, that doesn't sound right. It may be showing someone grace who, by any rational measure, does not really merit that grace. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So it's dysfunctional in many ways from the world paradigm. And so that can be the tricky part. It's not knowing God's direction that's the hardest. It's actually walking it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think obviously the guidance you have got over your years has been a big part of your success. Like, I posted it to my Instagram the other day, but it was a picture of you in a magazine. And that wasn't like anything planned. Me and Riz were at the spa at the, I think, Naples Grand Hotel. We went like on a Saturday, Sunday afternoon, and I'm just going through the magazine while we're in the waiting room, and I think it was just called the Naples magazine, and then they had an edition in there, like the top attorneys that were, I guess, not paid to be in there, but it said like peer-reviewed attorneys in Naples. And I'm going through it, and then bam, there you are standing in between like two doors, and the next page was you and Ernie in there and stuff like that. And I'm like, and I still figure, I'm like, man, these guys are a bigger deal than I even think about, because whenever I bring up, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm partnered with Jim and Ernie, and they're just like, oh yeah, like we know Jim. And through a lot of people know you through your church, through being a Christian, very vocal about it here in Naples, and kind of like your local politics and stuff like that. But I think that I would say that's probably a big part of your success is doing the right thing, right? Like I know I told you when I first met you, I said, I believe everything happens for a reason if you're doing like good things. If you're doing everything, how did I say that? Everything happens for a reason if you're doing the right thing. That's what I said.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. And I think you using, God as a guidance, as a big tool has got you to those right reasons. Whereas a lot of times people don't use that as a guidance, and they just go off and kind of do their own selfish things. And then that's where they end up where they end up. I could have saved myself a lot of headache in my life if I just would have been looking for a little more guidance from that. So, yeah.
Well, I can tell you that I appreciate certain of those observations. It's very, very humbling to be in a position where anybody thinks good of you. It's a good thing. But
oh, yeah.
if I'm being completely honest, which I try to be, the most important part of my testimony, honestly, has to start from places of failure. And I have had profound moral failure in my life, and I've walked through that profound moral failure. And I mean profound moral failure. And when people walk through that, and then God uses that in their life as evidence that people can change and come on the backside of that better than they were on the front end. I find that that's really some of the most helpful and valuable information that I can ever convey, because my wife and I went through a very, very difficult stage in our marriage, and anybody that knows my wife knows that she is just the sweetest, most amazing woman, and I took her through hell as a function of hyper selfishness, and this came through a period of time when to the outside world, things looked fine, and I'm talking about, this is 20 years ago, but it had to do with my infidelity. And the reason I bring this up is because I don't ever want to talk about where I am now without talking about where I've been. Because if I'm going to give God the glory for this, if I'm going to be exalted at any level, then we really have to talk about from whence I came. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it just looks like some guy who's who's doing a decent job professionally, and he gives God all the glory, but what is it really? Where does he really come from? And the other thing is, I think I can be more of a blessing to people if they know I come from a place of authenticity, mm-hmm. And that, I'm the kind of person that if anybody ever interacts with me, I don't care what you've done or where you've come from, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to be ready with grace, and, because of what I've been forgiven and where I've come, I've relied upon the grace and the gentleness of others under certain circumstances. And so that's just part of my DNA. That goes back to being truth-guided and relationship-driven. It goes back to my faith. And so I just think that's important to articulate in order to have a fullness of where I'm coming from.
No, that is so well said. And that's kind of what I kind of want to get out of all these little podcasts I'm doing, right? Like, no one's perfect. No one has usually a perfect growing up story, right? And thank you for sharing that, because I'm really happy that people are hearing this kind of stuff, because I think probably everyone has a similar story, and people usually just want to bury that and don't want people to know their past or things like that, and it's hard to grow from that.
It is,
but once it's out there in the open, it's honest, and you can get it out there, people usually relate to that. So usually when I tell people my story, struggles I had growing up, military career, struggles I had in my military career, struggles I had on the outside, stupid choices I made in my life that made my life really more difficult than they needed to be. But once I share those stories, my hope in that is that someone out there that hears it is maybe about to make that same stupid decision, and they're like, hey, you know what? I heard that guy talking, and I don't want to have that. I don't want to go down that journey, right? You can get forgiveness for what you do and things like that, but you're probably going to pay for it.
Oh yeah,
you're going to pay for it.
I definitely paid for it. It was terrible.
Yeah.
If you lose your moral authority as a man or as mm-hmm. as a woman or as a person, the law, there is nothing, and I never even knew what that meant. But you do something whereby you lose your moral authority, there is it's vicious, and the self-loathing which occurs, and the isolation, and the deceiver, Satan, he's gratified by everything that happens as a function of that. Mm-hmm. And so my message is, whether it's GED or stupidity, there's God can redeem everything, bad stuff, and I have testimony after testimony after testimony of stuff that's empirically inexplainable, but for the existence of a God that loves me. Yeah. Guaranteed. I have so many testimonies. If I had to go before a jury and try the case, I believe that I could convince any jury of the existence of God based solely upon my testimonies for what He's done in my life. So.
No, I'm really glad this came up. This wasn't even a thought that was going to come to my head.
Because you didn't know about that.
No, I did know about that. But no, I'm glad we did, because I feel like, honestly, we could talk hours on a subject like this about being men and doing right by your wives and stuff like that.
Amen, man.
because like, I mean, also like me and Riz have, we had our rough patches as well. And our rough patch was they call it the 7-year hump,
Yeah.
and we're going on 14 years.
That's awesome.
In 12 days, I think it is. It's 12 days, 14 years. But, if I just would have been smarter and not be stupid and actually just care a little bit, my life would have been a lot easier around that 7-year time frame with Riz. But I was just hard-headed, selfish, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I just don't care about, I just didn't care, and luckily she was more hard-headed than me and was like, you're not getting away that easy, and
My wife that was how Joy was.
Yeah.
She just said, I don't care what you think about this certain dynamic. I know you're my man. And so she, God, man, that woman's.
I really, in my opinion, the wives hold the marriage together. Like, people can say what they want, but the wife really is that home foundation, in my opinion. Because like we're kind of out there, I want to say more like the providers and stuff like that, going out there and bringing the meat home, and kind of that's our relationship. But without her, oh man, I'd be a lost soul. Like, she really is, I guess, the foundation of the marriage.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's beautiful. That's the kind of relationship you have with her. The Bible gets such a bad rap on different topics, and I, for the life of me, don't know why. Because if you'll just walk stuff out the way the Bible defines it, it works incredibly. A biblical marriage is one of the most powerful things on the planet, and that exchange of submission by the wife, but only in exchange for a husband that would die for her.
Yeah.
Right. That's not a bad deal.
It's not.
And so the design of a biblical marriage is supposed to be centered on unity, the spirit of unity. And if you live in that unity, the unity actually becomes the foundation, not either of the spouses. It's that collaborativeness, it's that cohesion, it's that love, it's that grace. And so, the Bible talks in Psalm 133 about, and this is a thing. There's so much good supernaturalness there, but there's literally a commanded blessing from God when you live in unity with someone. The Bible talks about dew, like the dew on the ground, and honey being poured over you, like that's what they used to do when they would anoint a king. Those are signs of favor and blessing from God, and that's what they say, that it's, how blessed is it when two brothers or a husband and wife live in unity. It's like, it's like the dew on Mount Hermon, or honey in the beard of Aaron, who was one of the great men of the Bible. So, long story short, man, marriage is awesome. It gets a bad rap.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. Like, I'd always try to tell like younger guys, like, especially like when I got out of the military, even just younger guys I meet today, I'm like, your spouse will definitely make or break you, right? So if you're out there just like hunting around the local girls at the bar and stuff like that, and then you probably wind up marrying that or get involved in that, you're probably going to financially pay for it over the next 10, 20 years, or change your life. And I'm very big in the traditional marriage, and so is Riz. And the marriages I see that are the opposite, just in my opinion, and from what I've personally seen, they never usually last. And I think the setup, same as you got with your wife, it's a great setup. I mean, it's peaceful when I come home. I want peace when I come home. I don't want it to be my horror story when I come home. And keeping our roles the way we do, and that doesn't mean like your wife can't go out and be a successful person. Like, I mean, Riz built our business, and she has a jewelry business. She also does a consulting business, things like that. They can still be out and be breadwinners. But I think it kind of comes down to that mindset, the submissiveness in a way. But like, she knows like I'm her protector, and she's kind of like my homemaker, Like, she tells like her girlfriends all the time, she's like, they're always like, why don't you ever drive anywhere or go anywhere without Howard? And she's like, I don't want to go anywhere without him because he's literally my protector. She was like, I don't want to go to like New Orleans on a girl trip without my guy because I don't know if I'm going to get kidnapped or robbed or whatever. You know, like I have my role, she has her role, and I think that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. And if you do it that way, we got no complaints. It's worked really good for us. So
yeah, and of course, different relationships and different personality types will yield sort of different synergies, right? So unity can look different depending upon the two who are involved. But the key is the Bible talks about being unequally yoked, and the concept behind that is that you don't want to enter into a lifelong relationship with someone who doesn't see the world as you do, because then when issues arise, you're not going to be deciding those issues in conflict or out of conflict using the same measures or sets of values, right? So when somebody's a Christian and they marry a non-Christian, when the hard times come, and they're going to, you have one person who's operating under maybe no set of variables or values, or principally selfish ones. And if you have a believer who's truly a believer, then you have this person who's coming from a selfless standpoint, and then maybe this person wants to pray about it, and they're like, that's ridiculous. Like that unequal yoking, it's a huge challenge, and it doesn't mean that every marriage that starts off that way is going to end in divorce, but it's definitely going to require probably supernatural intervention to actually, survive the age, especially with the level of stress that the average modern person is having to deal with these days.
Oh yeah, I mean, you see it as well as I do. There's y'all don't do divorce law or anything like that at the law firm, but I mean, of it. There's just so many divorces out there. It's crazy to see these marriages that maybe don't even last a year. It still shocks me, or even some of the ones I see that go longer and then end up real nasty. But man, I feel like honestly you could have your own podcast talking about this and giving marriage advice and stuff like that. Because 30 years. That's 30 years, right?
30 years.
30 years. That's a long time. That's not something you usually hear anymore these days. It's pretty rare. Usually you hear like, oh, I'm on my fourth marriage, things like that. So
people are just amazed when they hear 30 years. They're like, they don't realize that we got married when we were 12,
Yeah.
So, no, I'm just kidding. But
because you were 20, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so same age as me.
Yeah.
Look at another Easter egg right there.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
At 20.
So, yeah, the 30-year marriage, man, and especially with what we have gone through, and the raising of the kids, and the whole story about the two children that we adopted, and we have so much life experience that I would really value an opportunity to talk about anything involving family or leadership or whatever, because we've just been we've learned so much over the years.
No, absolutely. So not to change subject, because I think we're actually going to do another podcast talking just about family, marriages, Bible, things like that, because I think a lot of young people, guys and girls, need to kind of hear that story and definitely hear your experience. I can speak to 14 years, but you doubled it, and to hear a 30 years experience, that's pretty incredible. But to change gears a little bit, let's go back, because I eventually want to walk up to like how you got to the title company, but let's go back to young Jim Boatman attorney days.
Yeah.
What did you start off doing? Like, what did you start off practicing then compared to what you're practicing now?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. Right out of law school, I went to work for a retired judge. His name was Dominic Southey, and he was really interesting, brilliant guy. So instead of starting out at a larger firm, I started with him. And how that came about was that, this is kind of a long story, but I'll try to distill it. I met a young man whose sister had been murdered in a hotel in Orlando, and basically the murder was covered up, and it was ruled a suicide. And she was from Ethiopia, and if you commit suicide, and you're Ethiopian, it's like profound disgrace. And I don't want to go over my pay grade and how much I know about it, but suffice it to say, there was substantial evidence that it was not a suicide, that she was murdered, and she was murdered by a manager of this hotel. And I was fascinated. So I was still in law school. I was a third-year law student, but I just felt compelled to help this guy. Because when I was looking at the evidence, and he just convinced me. So we started to look for well-known lawyers who would pick up the case and help us. And in that process, we came across Dominic Salfi, because he was very well respected from an intellectual standpoint and from a professional standpoint. And he was the type of guy who, before he was a judge, he went after corruption that was within municipal and local governments, very inculcated corruption, and became known for that. So he was like fearless. He didn't care who he was going after. And so, anyways, that's how I came to know Dominic Salfi. And so I was working on that case, and he offered me a job right out of school. And it wasn't as good paying as I might have otherwise gotten, but I really valued that time. So that's where I started.
So you kind of started off like criminal law.
Well, it wasn't really a criminal case. It was really more of a civil case, because we wanted to bring an action against the hotel.
Gotcha.
And we did want to try to encourage and motivate local prosecution of the individual. So there was some of that mixed in there. But Dominic's practice was a very broad spectrum practice. He was known to just take cases that no one else would take. So it was everything from standard commercial cases to some pastor who'd been accused of like molesting someone or whatever. Like, there was all kind of crazy cases that he had.
So he kind of just took I guess like oddball cases.
He took oddball cases that were intellectually intriguing, but that he believed in. And then, like an animal, he would sit there for 17 hours a day typing and researching and studying, and it was.
That's pretty cool.
It was good for a while.
Now, was that here or was that Tallahassee?
That was actually Orlando.
Oh, you said Orlando.
Yeah, because I grew up in Orlando. I went to Winter Park High School and grew up in Orlando.
That's right. So. And then now, what kind of law do you personally do that you focus on? Because I know you're the managing partner at Boatman Ritchie, but like, what is it you still practice today?
Commercial litigation is like my DNA. So any dispute involving property or money that does not involve family law, or personal injury. Now, having said that, we do handle some personal injury, but we don't like to tell anybody. We have some cases, but no family law. I do sometimes get involved in family law cases, in that if there's a dispute involving, say, a corporation, one of the spouses of a corporation, then I might be asked to come in and assist in that, that way.
And then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, there's like around 10 attorneys at Boatman Ritchie?
Correct.
Yeah. And are they all kind of the same practice as you, or they kind of just go out and they have their own specialty that they practice with the law firm?
No, we have some diversity. Dan Hogan in Tallahassee, as we discussed, his DNA is criminal defense. However, it's been diversified substantially over the last couple of years, and excuse me, he's one of the lawyers that handles personal injury. His wife is a fantastic lawyer who's a partner of a firm in Tallahassee, and all they do is personal injury. So he's kind of got the ability to sort of pillow talk about personal injury cases. So we're like, hey man, if we pick up a personal injury case, you can handle that, right? So he's got several of those going, actually.
Yeah.
And then we have a couple of young lawyers who help me with some transactional work. We assist in the purchase of small corporations, or the addition of shareholders and things like that. So I have a couple of young lawyers that help me with the transactional stuff. But principally, we're commercial litigation.
Commercial litigation.
Yeah.
Now, that's one thing I love about being partners with you is people. I mean, even myself personally, especially as a business owner, especially as a broker in real estate, and your real estate experience, the title company comes into play all the time. But like, there's always something that comes up for me as a broker, whether it's a contractual issue or there's a he said she said in real estate kind of issue, things like that, or just something in business in general. Even stuff like right now from the hurricane damage here, I got people hitting me up like, hey, I think I need an attorney for this kind of insurance dispute or things like that. And like, I love having the ability to just like text you and Ernie, and I'm like, hey, here's the situation, like, do you guys do that, or who do you got?
Yeah.
And you always got like an answer for it. Yeah. But I think a lot of people that are out in the world, especially other like real estate brokers, know how valuable it is to have an attorney in your corner, because a lot of times just that one little text message and you can answer it right there will stop it from going any further. It's just like, oh, here's the answer, done.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have in the Rolodex, at least one litigator that you like and respect, who can speak into situations and maybe provide guidance before the matter escalates, and certainly a litigator that doesn't sort of live on the escalation, because there are some litigators who they just spin everything up because that's how they make a living, right? And so that's never been the way that we've practiced. But many times when we get questions or we see a situation, our goal is to help someone at the lowest level of escalation resolve the matter in a way that sort of maximizes the outcome for their client. And so that can be a little tricky, because if you're always getting your advice from maybe somebody who's only done transactional work and they're constantly wringing their hands over conflict, you're not going to maximize your client's position, because that person that's not their goal. Their goal is to ameliorate conflict and split the baby on everything. Now, sometimes it's just wise to split the baby, but you should at least have good, sound recommendation and strategic, structure to the recommendations given, which is informed by, well, here's what the document says, and here's what we could do. And so, if you want to go DEFCON 1, we got this. If you want to go DEFCON 2, we got, get some options.
Yeah.
Because just because you escalate conflict a little bit doesn't always mean it's going to necessarily blow up, right? Because people, especially with transactions, are inherently wanting to avoid the escalation. So if you're measured with your escalation, many times you can just get a way better deal for your client. And oh, by the way, that used to be how it always was, right? Back in the day of single agency, but don't get me started on that.
No, that's for another podcast,
Yeah.
single agency and stuff. I really do like that idea. That actually might come to fruition one day.
Yeah.
I think it really, there's a market for that, as we talked about. But yeah, no, like having you guys on my side as a broker, I can't tell you, like, a lot of times I hate it, I don't hate it, I love it. I feel like I use you guys too much, because I'm like, hey, here's an issue that came up in real estate. And I mean, you guys have the answer and you spit it out like in a minute, but I'm always like, man, I always feel like I'm just using them, because like a lot of times I'll just be like, hey, I need to put you on an email and CC you just to get some oversight. And just by literally CCing one of the attorneys on an email, it'll stop that bad person from continuing bad, because they're like, oh, we got real eyes on this now. And then they're just like, okay, you know what? We're just going to follow the contract like we're supposed to.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And just for the record, after having those tomahawk steaks and the wine and the cigars the other night, you don't ever have to worry about overutilization of the texts.
Oh, there's going to be a lot more tomahawks and cigars and wine for sure. That was a really good time the other night. Yeah. Just sitting around here smoking cigars. Actually, I just cleaned the ashtray out today. It had been in there the whole time.
Yeah, it was cool to have the, going out to dinner is great, but the nice thing about a home, right, especially a home that's beautiful, is we could have the kids over. Exactly. And it was just like that family thing, which is
that was really good, because like I got to meet like the daughter, got to meet Ernie's son and things like that. Where normally, we don't bring him out when we go to dinner. So no, it was good, like getting the families together and everything. And it was time for that. I know we were supposed to do it a while back, but then the hurricane kind of, messed things up and stuff like that. But yeah, no, like having you guys in the corner, especially for the title side, because let's see, you guys had Boatman Ritchie probably for like 10 or 15 years before title company.
Yes.
Is that about right?
Yeah.
So then you guys started a title company 3 years ago,
Correct.
something like that. And then got me involved in that. But like a lot of people don't realize in Florida, you don't have to be an attorney to do a title. Like it's not a requirement. Like I can actually do closings as a broker if I wanted to. Not that I do, but a lot of people they hear a title company. I think they're probably just kind of programmed to think, oh, there's an attorney there. And then you find out there's no attorney there at all to give you any kind of advice. And, if you hired them to represent you, it could be kind of a problem when things go south, which it seems like a lot of times in real estate, things go south a lot, usually for whatever reason. Other party trying to pull a quick one on you, or then they find out this is going to cost me a lot of money, and now they want to just try to like change gears on how to go.
Seller remorse and buyer remorse.
Exactly. And then, or like a lot of times you'll find out like a title company maybe only has one attorney on staff, with very little, I guess you can say the right term, but real world like legal advice or litigation advice. They may have only been out of school for a couple of years and have never really done anything, I guess, litigation wise.
Yeah, and they're going to be I think many times they're going to be overly risk averse. If you're overly risk averse, you're not going to bring anything to the table when things get tricky. It doesn't mean you want a guy that's going to blow everything up all the time, but you want somebody who can give you good, sound, measured advice.
One thing I've learned throughout my travels, and this became apparent to me when I was in law school, but experience is everything when it comes to law. Like, you just kind of don't know what you don't know unless it's been taught to you or you have real world experience. So, like, I mean, who do you want to go with? The guy that's been in law for 20 years, the guy that's been in law for 1 year, and you're going up for a $500,000 lawsuit. And I think that's kind of the good things that you guys bring to the table for the title side is, you and Ernie have, 50 years probably law experience? Because you got about 30?
No, I have 25?
25
now?
Years.
And I think Ernie's got like 8.
8 years, something like that. So you got a lot of experience there.
Yeah.
But then you have like 10 other attorneys with their experience.
That's right.
And then you have one of the attorneys who's also a retired judge here in Collier County.
That's right.
So he's got how many years of legal experience?
Absolutely.
A lot.
Yeah.
And just being able to pick that brain right there where he can probably end the conflict like that, instead of it escalating to a point for the next year to find out like, oh, if we would have known this, it could have been over.
Yeah.
So having that experience is huge. I think it's really huge for the title and real estate side, just because like there's always something that comes up. And that's one thing I love about working with you guys, and even like other agents and brokers that I send to you guys, and even just my other agents. I'm like, hey, you know what? Just ask this person, see what they say, and because that's kind of how I always was at my title attorneys. There was one I was very close with, Brandy. I'm very close with her, and she really helped like raise me as a good real estate agent and business going up. Like she would I'm always asking her for advice. Like, hey, how do I do this? How do I do this? Even like the first time I got into like commercial real estate, I'm like, I've never wrote a commercial real estate contract. And she's like, well, what's your concerns? I'm like, I don't know. Can you just like review it for me? And like, let me know, like, I just don't know what these terminology means and things like that. And she's like, okay, bam, bam, bam. And she's also very experienced. I want to say around 20-ish years in law. But having that kind of experience in your corner, especially as a newer agent, like with Trinity Title and things like that, and just having like brokers that might have hundreds of real estate agents in their firm, there's going to be something that comes up. And I think that's kind of like the good thing they get with you guys compared to let's say a title company has no attorney or one attorney, or they have one attorney that doesn't even want to kind of get involved in disputes because they just kind of want to keep that peaceful name around town, where you guys are like, hey, we're separate, but we got take your pick of what attorney you need for what cause.
Right.
And I think that's probably a huge thing. Well, I know it's a huge thing for what we have at Trinity, just because of the amount of attorneys we got.
Yeah, our goal is to simply, when we started the title company, I'd always been open to it and wanted to do it, but I had to wait for the right, dynamic, and I wanted to do it from within, and ultimately we got the personnel, and then we had the opportunity for the office in Marco. We really love Marco, and so we wanted to kind of plant a flag in Marco. Granted, we have offices in Marco, Naples, Fort Myers, and Tallahassee, but the goal was to build out a title company that just operated at the same level that Boatman Ritchie does. We're AV rated. You can't be more highly rated than we are as a law firm, and we constantly, respectively, each of the attorneys, I've been getting the Client Distinction Award for many, many years, which is only given to a tiny percentage of people who are AV rated. So both in terms of my professional efficacy and then what my clients say about me is very high. We wanted to bring that level of excellence in the title world, and not necessarily, I had no expectations. We didn't do a bunch of pro formas. We weren't going to try to take, all of the work from everybody, but we wanted to build in that service, and have it available for the people who wanted to synergize with us. And so far, it's been fantastic. And man, when you came aboard, we just knew it was the right thing. And it's funny, Trinity Title, and there's three of us. And it's working out fantastic.
Oh yeah, no, it's been nothing but a blessing to be working with you guys and just seeing how you guys do operations. But it's come in handy so much for even just like the agents underneath me as their broker, or even just like other clientele who had questions like, oh, how do I do this? How do I do this? Or I need to change this. Just having all that law experience in the background it's been huge. And the fact that you guys are basically along the entire almost Gulf Coast is huge to get people into the office if they actually need to do a signing, or a lot of times we just do a mobile notary, which is easy. Just go to your house, sign, too easy, and do it that way. Even during the hurricane, the office got hit in Marco, no power, no internet, no electricity, and we were still running operations. I think we closed down for like 2 days, maybe 2 days. We closed down, sort of, kind of, and then we were right back up and running. Because I had closings up in the Panhandle, and there was closings going on over here, and you guys were still knocking them out without internet.
Yeah, it was fun. Oh, jeez. This hurricane, that could be another podcast I'd like to never have. It just breaks my heart. I can't even think about so much of what I used to think about. I put my boat up for sale, and it's just kind of a tough one, man.
Oh, I know. I was not expecting that hurricane to come here. That really kind of threw
we should probably this should be a no Ian zone. We should probably not even talk about.
Okay, we won't talk about the hurricane. Let's talk about some other fun stuff though. One thing that kind of got you on board pretty quick was car racing.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if a lot of people know it, maybe not, but like you're a legit car racer. You're not one of these like racing out here on 41 Tamiami Trail. Like you actually, like you're an instructor too at Sebring, and I think a place in Texas.
Well, I'm an instructor at. Well, first of all, I don't race as much as I would like to. Racing is extremely expensive, and you tend to break a lot of things. What I drive it's called HPDE. It's High Performance Drivers Education. But if you're in the racing world, you know what that is, because those are track days where basically a club or an individual rents a track.
Yeah.
And then people bring their race cars, many of which are the same race cars that race at professionally at Daytona, etc. And you have it's kind of like a test day. So there's no trophies. The day is broken up into various run groups. usually 1 through 4. So 1 being novice and 4 being expert. So you might be out there with, I don't know, name your favorite race car driver. It's possible they'll show up at Sebring. So I got into this about 15 years ago, and I bought a Lotus Exige, and I didn't realize when I bought it that you could actually show up at a racetrack, and for $300 you could just drive it as fast as you wanted to for 25 minutes, at different sessions throughout the day. And that's what HPD is. So over the course of time, I got better and better and better, and I became an instructor, and I instruct regularly at Sebring. I've instructed at Daytona and Homestead. I've instructed at Road Atlanta and Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. But it's so fantastic, and it's kind of like a secret. I mean, a lot of people know about it, but there's a lot of people that don't realize that you could just take your Ferrari, for instance, and me and you could have it over to Sebring, and you sign up for one day, and I'll be in the passenger seat, and you'll be in the driver's seat, and you'll probably have 4 to 5 sessions throughout the day of 25 minutes, and we'll just talk you through apex, braking points, turn-ins, and you start out slow, and how HPDE works is, especially at the lower levels, if somebody's behind you, they're probably faster, and you just put your hand out and you give them what's called a point by. And then when you come up to behind people, there's none of this dive bombing and any of that. There's no trophies handed out, and you want to take your car home without wrecking it. So everybody drives, with respect. So
this isn't like Talladega Nights, like cars flying in there, not first or last.
No. Now bad stuff can happen, and periodically does. But as I like to tell people when they talk about how dangerous it is, the drive from here to Sebring in the vehicle is way more dangerous than anything that happens out on track.
Yeah,
that's statistically true. So
so you still have the Lotus, right?
I still have the Lotus. Unfortunately, it's in a couple of different parts right now, so that's not what I track.
And then you got the Miata, which I saw the other night.
Yeah, we have a fantastic Miata I bought for $865, and then proceeded to put about $10,000 in it at least, just to kind of make it track ready. And so, but I got that from my son. He was like 15 at the time. But it's a great little car.
And you have another one too, right? Isn't it like a
BMW 135i that's track repaired?
Don't you have like a I want to call it like a kit car, but it's actually like it looks like a European kind of like touring car, or no?
No.
Okay,
no,
never mind.
Yeah.
Maybe that was something you showed me that you raced one time or something.
Oh yeah. You're talking about the Elan DPO2. Yeah. That was actually a friend of mine's car. That I was able to track for a little while.
Yeah,
it's a really cool car.
Oh, it looked fast. It looked like a lot of fun.
But we need to get the car that you and I've been looking at.
Yeah, I know.
See how it's going to work out.
I really want it. I was really shocked that Riz was okay with this. So for no one knows what we're talking about, but me and Jim here, we're probably going to buy this Porsche GT3, and it's like. Not like your, it doesn't have Apple iTunes and all that, like Apple CarPlay. Like it's a legit
it's full race
car.
prepared. It's not street legal.
Yeah, so it's a real race car.
Roll cage.
There's no interior. It's just, it is a race car. So I'm really hoping we get that because
we will. It's just a matter of time. It's not a question. It's just my friend that has it is getting. He's going to get an upgrade.
Yeah,
so we're happy to take that downgrade and throw a passenger seat in it, and me and you will just have a blast.
Because I've always been into cars. I actually grew up more at the drag strip back in Southeast Texas. Drag strip nights were like my favorite. But then as I got older, I still love drag racing. I don't do that at all. But I've always wanted to get into track racing. And one of the things I had actually told Riz right when we sold the business, I was like, me and my buddy Eric that you met, we were talking. I was like, he was into it as well. And he actually bought me a Porsche Experience. that I haven't gone to yet for my birthday.
Oh.
So we're gonna go up, I think, to Birmingham or Atlanta, and it's like
Atlanta is where you should go.
I think it's like 2 or 3 days. So we're gonna go do that. He bought it for me for my birthday, but me and him at that time, we were talking like, dude, we ought to like get into racing because he loves driving cars. And I was even just thinking like, you know what, maybe I'll just buy a little Miata and strip it out and, turn it into a race car or something like that. And I kind of pitched it to Riz maybe back around May or something, and she was like, no, that's stupid, you're gonna waste all your money. I'm like, what, so you can go buy a purse?
How interesting is it that then you would just very shortly thereafter become friends and partners with somebody who's like doing that very thing as reasonably as one could. In other words, like I'm very well plugged in, and I know where we should start and where we can go. So.
And I think your influence kind of helped this decision, because when I told her, I was like, hey, me and Jim, want to buy this race car. I think maybe you were, she was listening to you on the phone when we were talking. And she was like, yeah, I'm cool with that. And I was like, what? I was just like, what is this going to cost me? Or it was like, maybe she bought something that costs more expensive than a car. She's actually looking at me right now saying she's hungry. She's like, she's doing this like I'm hungry, I mean, it is like 7-ish, I think, at night or something like that. But no, this race car thing is going to happen. I really want to get into racing because I don't know if I told you this, but I know I was talking to my buddy Eric about it. Next year, I want to go up to Pikes Peak, and I want to do that climb. I want to race up there, and I couldn't do it this year. I was just too busy with doing the transfer of the business. But I really want to get up there and do it. Not to bring up a sad subject, but I was actually going to do it with the Cobra that was just lost in the hurricane flood. We're not talking about the hurricane, but that's a replica, so I can get another one, no big deal. But I think I probably want to bring the Chevelle up there and race that up the hill. It might struggle a little bit, but
I know that I got a trailer.
Yeah,
a flatbed trailer, a car trailer, and we could throw that GT3 on there.
But yeah, if we have the GT3, which I'm pretty sure we'll have by that time, racing that up the hillside, oh man, that would just be
that's
dream come true.
Yeah,
like that's something I really want to do. I have put so much thought into this about the truck I want to get and like a whole car hauler, and then just going around the nation with this thing and having a blast.
Oh yeah.
I haven't really told that to Riz yet, but it's cheaper than bags, I think. So, yeah. But no, I love it that you're into racing. That was one thing that really, really kind of got me on your just the connection there, and then the shooting, because you're a big shooter like me, and going out to the shooting range. And
I'm not even on your realm, but I do love it, and but
hey, you get me on the driving skill, I'll get you on the shooting skill.
That's a fantastic exchange.
Which all my SF buddies, all the Green Berets and SEALs watching this are probably like, John's a terrible shooter. Like, what are they talking? Nah. Those guys are good shots. Way better than I am. I learned from some solid dudes. But yeah, no, that's definitely gonna. Yeah. So shooting cars. What else is there about Jim besides shooting cars, law, title, God, family? Yeah, man, that's a pretty. I used to be a boater, but we're not going to wait. No Ian talk. No Ian talk. No, but yeah, man, that's a pretty good wrap up. I love to travel too, so Yeah.
We got to take the girls to Budapest.
Oh, wait, are you going to Budapest?
No, I just got back from Budapest.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
When was that?
It was in July. Yeah, and I officiated a wedding over there. I married.
You did tell me this. Yeah.
In a castle. I married people in a castle in Hungary. I mean, that's like. That was pretty cool. That's one of those top of the mountain type.
You're also
experiences.
an ordained. Is that what it's called?
No, I'm not ordained. All you have to be in the state of Florida is a notary. So yes, I'm a notary. I'm an ordained notary.
That's really cool. So yeah, if you guys want to get married,
Jim,
but
I am a man of God, so I can. I've married I've officiated 5 weddings at this point. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a hobby.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, one day I'm sure we'll go on a trip too. So I know I told you, Riz and I we're taking off for Rome on the 14th, and we're going to be there for sometime. So probably can't get away, but hey, if you can get away and just take a trip to Italy, come on, you know.
Well, be careful what you offer. It might just be accepted.
I would be okay with that. I would totally be, because, you know, we can go to Italy, and that was actually the first place I drove a Lamborghini. That's what got, did I ever tell you the story? This is what got me into the Aventador. So I've always been more of a muscle car guy, because that's just what I grew up around in my hometown. There's no exotics there. And like the best you're going to get is like a GT Mustang, you know, maybe an old Fox Body 5.0, something like that. Maybe some guys got an old Chevelle or a Nova. Actually, I did know a guy with an awesome Nova. It ran like high tens. It was
Wow.
great. It was my buddy Billy, his girlfriend's dad had it. And oh man, I just remember that thing throwing me in the back seat when I was probably like 17 years old. I was like, oh, I want one of these. You know, it had a 383 stroker. I mean, it was great. So Riz and I go over to Italy. This was 2012, I think it was. I think it was 2012 or 13. And we took like a 30-day vacation. And was it 30 days? Yeah, I think it was about 30 days. Because we were always so busy in the military that we would just basically save up our vacation time and then just take like a big trip every 3 or 4 years. So we go to Italy, and we're going to the Lamborghini factory. We're going down the interstate highway, whatever it is there, and she's like giving me directions on how to get there, and we're just going through this farm country, and I'm like, babe, I'm pretty sure this is not where the Lamborghini factory is. Like, Lamborghini's not going to have a factory in the middle of like olive tree farms and just cows and stuff like that. And she's like, this is where it's saying. I'm like, all right. So we're driving.
You know, I think Lamborghini actually started off making tractors.
Yeah.
So.
So it's out there. Like, you probably go 20 minutes from the highway, like in the middle of farm country. I'm like, there's just no way. And we get up there, and then out of the middle of nowhere, there's this massive Lamborghini factory.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, wow, this is super cool. So we get there. We have no tour plan, no tickets, no nothing. And they almost don't even let us in there. They're like, oh, what tour are you with? And we're like, oh, we're not with a tour. And they're like, oh, all these times are scheduled. And I'm like, hey, you know, like, I'm from Texas. I really want to go see these cars. And they're like, okay. So we bought our tickets to go in the factory. And we're just kind of like, I don't remember if they had us like tag around with a tour. We just kind of like walked around, did our own thing. But I'm looking at all these amazing cars. And I mean, I had like Lamborghini posters as a kid and Ferrari posters, but I mean, these things are just way not attainable. So there's no Lamborghini rental at Lamborghini Factory, but literally across the street, there is a Lamborghini car rental place, and it's a bar.
Wow.
So it's like a coffee.
That's a dangerous combo.
Yeah, well, it's like a coffee bar and like a liquor bar. So like they had you take your pick what you want, but it's kind of like a cafe kind of style. And I was like, I want to rent a Lamborghini. And Riz was like, no, you're not going to waste your money. We don't have money for that. That's stupid. So earlier that day, we actually were in Milan before we went down. I forgot where the Lamborghini factory is, but she bought a pair of sunglasses for like, I don't know, $130, whatever it was, at Prada. And so I told her, I said, if that car is cheaper than your sunglasses, I'm renting it. And they had like, I think the Gallardos and stuff like that. You could get, I think, maybe for like €120, you could get like 20 or 30 minutes in them or something like that. But they had that Aventador there. And it was like a gunmetal gray. And I was just like, oh man, that thing's sick. And it was 10 minutes for €120. $120. So cheaper than the sunglasses. And she's like, it's only 10 minutes. I was like, I don't care. I'm doing this. And then I think I paid like another $10 to GoPro it or something. The guy put the GoPro like in the center. And I had never personally seen an Aventador, never heard one, other than like maybe I saw one like on YouTube or something like that. And cranked that thing up with that little start button. And just hearing that thing just, wow. And I was just like, it gave me goosebumps. I was like, oh man, you know, like this is crazy. So, I tell the guy, he's like, oh, I was like, I want to use paddle shifters. He's like, you want to use paddle shifters? I was like, yeah. We were kind of having a little language barrier issue as well. So he like puts it like in sport mode. I'm doing the paddle shifters. As soon as I take off, the wheels just like spin. I'm like, oh, you know. And the guy was cool. So we're going down these. So there's no track. You're on these country roads, like the same roads that you're driving into Lamborghini Factory. You're on these. They're just 2 lane, or I say they're 1 lane each way. Right. Super narrow. and there's like tractors out there driving and stuff like that. And this guy's like, he's like, "Yeah, go, like go around him." I'm like, okay, so I go around, and there's like a bridge guardrail coming up, and I was like, oh nah. I mean, there's like four cars in front of us, one of them being like an 18-wheeler. He was like, no, like feel the acceleration. And I was like, okay, buddy. And I mean, also like that car is so wide, and the way you sit in it, you don't really see out very good. And I mean, I just started like getting on that thing. I'm passing like an 18-wheeler with a guardrail on the side of me, like hoping I'm not going to like scratch this thing on the side. And I mean, I'm just getting after it. And I mean, I got after it really, really hard. And then we go down, like turn around, and I actually see him like he had a copy of my driver's license. I see him like look at it, and he was like, "Texas?" And I was like, "Yeah," like, and he was just like, but the guy was just so cool. And I tell you what, for $120 for 10 minutes, I don't think I ever stopped smiling, because every time I hit that paddle shifter and just heard that V12 just go, it just put such a big smile on my face. So I told myself that day, I was like, one day I'm going to get one of these things, but it wasn't like I had to, but I was like, I want one of these things one day. Didn't think I would actually get one up and actually 10 years later, and then I wound up getting one. But that was how the whole Aventador thing became like this thing to me. So and that was actually the first and the last exotic sports car I ever drove until I got mine.
Wow.
I never drove a Ferrari. I never drove like a Porsche, a McLaren. I never drove any other car until I got my Aventador 10 years later. So I was just like,
you waited.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I had planned it that way, but I just thought it was kind of interesting how that like worked out, because people are like, oh, have you been like driving a lot of exotics? I'm like, actually, it was like 10 years ago, and that was, I guess it was kind of like a birthday present to me. It was like 2 months before my birthday. I think she actually kind of wanted it more than I did. She's like, give me the eyes, like I want dinner, But oh man, I love that car so much. It's funny how those little things like that, it could be 10 years ago, but they just mean so much to you, like later in your life. And I mean, for me, it's all about the noise. If it has a noise, it gets me.
It sounds so good. And that Ferrari you got, that I couldn't believe it the other night when we were but
yeah,
that exhaust. It's just a deal changer.
Yeah, no, I love, so Riz's Ferrari is absolutely amazing. Like that 458, I love it. Like that Rift exhaust, 1K Motorsports put on in Fort Myers, like it sounds like an F1 car. It's so loud. It sounds so good. I think she likes it. She hasn't said anything about it, but on the Aventador, she was like, it's too loud now. And I'm like, well, that's the whole point. But on that 458, it just changes the whole tune of that car. And I mean, I love it. I love how that thing sounds. So, but I'm going to like the sound of that GT3 better when we get that on the track.
It sounds good.
Well, I think that's about all I got. Actually, we're going like an hour and 20 minutes. And Riz keeps looking at me because she is starving. Got anything else you want to add to this?
Not really. I mean, you and I could probably, talk a few hours, but I think we've covered a nice broad range, and I really, again, I appreciate you having me on. It means a lot. You know? So I'm glad to be part of your story, man. And I just look to the synergies that God is going to, sort of facilitate as we continue to just, be brothers and just work hard together and be authentic and just have fun, I mean, and watch each other's backs and just be, I'm just humbled to be on your team and in your sphere of influence because of what I know about you and what I've learned about you. It's just, I don't know. I'm just looking forward to the future as we build this thing out.
Absolutely, same. I can't say any better. Everything you just said, I feel the same exact way. So yeah, definitely more to come from us. And I think you're gonna have to come back on here. We're probably going to talk just about marriages and one episode, cars on one episode. We could talk about cars for
crazy
episodes.
cases,
crazy cases, something like that.
I don't know. Have you you've probably told your whole story. I mean, you have so many amazing aspects of how you've, come about. I don't know if
I haven't told my whole story. I kind of just gave a brief.
We could almost flip the script. I could almost like interview you.
We could definitely do that. There's a lot of stories out there I could talk about that have definitely developed me as who I am today. And that's kind of the whole point is getting those stories out there. So yeah, no, we definitely got to do this again. Got to get Ernie out here too. I want to do one-on-one with Ernie, but maybe one day, if our sponsors come through, and then I can upgrade to a 3 microphone thing, because I can only have 2 on here. Then I can get like you and Ernie in here, and then we can just all sit.
That
and
would
talk.
be good. That would make for a very nice banter.
Yeah, maybe when Boatman Ritchie cuts that check for $100,000 for this episode, then I can go get the 3-way microphone.
Yeah, so we can do that sometime in the fourth quarter of 2028.
2028. Yeah. Well, Jim, it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you for coming. Oops, I hit that so loud. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I know I'm taking up some family time from the kiddos and the wife, but I really appreciate you coming out and doing this, because I just asked you today to do it. And no, I really appreciate it. I think the viewers are going to gain a lot from this, and just all kinds of different aspects of what we talked about. So no, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure anytime, man.
Okay. And that's